we play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Live from Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Welcome so much, or so glad to have you. Thanks for joining. I got a great show today, as always. And just as a reminder, we are in a temporary station change at the moment. If you're listening to this on 99.5 live at 1 o'clock on Saturday, you're like, what the heck? This is a temporary station change due to Ouachita Baptist football. Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love, can normally be found on 96.5 FM, which is a sister station. But during Ouachita Baptist football till roughly mid-November, we're at 1 o'clock on Saturdays on 99.5 FM, and then we'll replay on Sunday evenings at 5 o'clock on our normal station of 96.5. And then sometime in mid-November, we'll roll back over on Saturdays at 1 o'clock on 96.5 FM. So if for some reason this isn't your cup of tea, which I hope it is, but if it's not, don't worry, it's temporary. But if it is your cup of tea, then keep on listening and follow us back over to 96.5 FM in mid-November. Anyway, thanks so much. I appreciate my partners at Salem Media, for always working with me on this stuff. And I've got Steve Marston ably running the board, the Starship Enterprise in there right now. All those pretty buttons and everything. Thanks, Steve, for all you do. And Zach, pleasure. Go ahead.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and Zach, our normal producer, is over doing football stuff right now. So we'll have Zach back mid-November as well. Steve, I'm hearing a little doubling of my voice in the headphones. Is that just me, or would the rabid listening audience be hearing that as well? Okay, no, I can live with it. All right, I could have done the handy dandy hidden button where I'm talking to you and people don't hear it, but then it would have been dead air, and that's worse, I think, than them hearing me answer that question. All right, moving right along. We've got I'll introduce her in just a moment. We got a super cool guest today who is, when it comes to being a veteran of the video game development industry, it doesn't get much more veteran than her. I've talked to her many times. She's always a pleasure to talk to. And she also is still very active. She's the CEO of Old School, which we'll get to here in a moment. But first, the normal housekeeping notes. This is Geek Talk Radio. You are welcome to call in at 501-823-0965. That's 501-823-0965. Or you can tweet me at Shane Plays, ShanePlays, and I try to monitor that during the show. We also, speaking of Shane Plays, that's ShanePlays.com. Show notes for today's show are at ShanePlays.com right now. So you go to ShanePlays.com. And you can see notes for the news items and our guest today right now. And that's just something I throw up there. So it's like if you didn't hear something or if you want to know more, it's just a convenient thing I do for you. And we also, the show is live. It's live Geek Talk Radio. I don't know of any other show out there like it. We're live over the air in the Central Arkansas metro area of 700,000 plus people. But we also go out as a podcast. And so that'll be going out on my blog at shaneplays.com, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. And so that usually goes out within a few days of the live show. And then last but certainly not least, Shane Plays is carried on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is SciFi for your Wi-Fi. KryptonRadio.com. We're carried a week delay there. Gene Turnbow ably runs that internet geek radio station. And we run on Saturdays at 11 and Mondays at 11. That's 11 Pacific, 1 Central. So they're on Pacific time. Now, I've already mentioned the station change, so I'm going to go right into introducing our guest, Burger Becky Heineman. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, hey, I'm so tickled to have you on. You know, I've talked to you several times through our mutual friend, Matt Barton of Matt Chat. Of course, we talk on Facebook some. I thought you'd done a couple of great interviews, at least one, if not more, over on our friend Adam's Fragments of Silicon podcast. So I'm just really tickled to have you on the show. What I'm going to do is I've got a couple of, we're not going to do a news segment at this point, but I got a couple of news items I want to get out there right now. And then we're just going to jump right in to your interview. So, but again, thanks so much for being on the show. I really, really appreciate it. So I've got kind of a sad news item to share with folks, especially comic book lovers. Steve Dillon, who was an iconic artist, comic book artist that worked on Hellblazer, Preacher, and Punisher, has died. We don't have details. His brother tweeted out, said that he's gone. He's in his mid-50s, so we don't know what happened. But his work is incredibly unique, and his collaborations with Garth Ennis are some of the more unique and amazing comic book work out there. And of course the Preacher show that is based on their comic book is on AMC right now. So just wanted to, mention that. I know there's comic book fans are like, oh, including myself, very sad to hear this, but his friends and family, I'm sure, are just devastated. So we definitely, I'd like to extend my condolences and prayers. I'm a man of faith. My prayers to Steve Dillon's family. And if people don't believe that way, that's fine. Positive thoughts, good thought, all that stuff. I'm not trying to tell you how to believe, but we do lament the loss of Steve Dillon. Next, I just want to mention before I forget, just in case we don't get time for a news segment today, Star Trek Adventures, which is the Star Trek role-playing game that's coming from Modifius Entertainment, has a living playtest sign-up, which is basically their beta test. The link is on the site, and you can go and you can volunteer to playtest in either the original series or the next generation timeline, as either like combat or exploring or a little bit of mix of both. So, and I just wanted to thank Patreon supporter Garen Gillum for that news item. In fact, Garen's reached out to me to see if I wanted to play in his living playtest campaign via Roll20, and if I can make that happen, I will. So Garen, if you're listening to this, thank you very much for the tip. All right, so on with the show. I want to introduce Rebecca Heineman, Burger Becky Heineman. If you're a fan of especially computer role-playing games, but really games in general, and you don't know who Burger Becky Heineman is, shame on you. She's a longtime veteran of the computer industry. She was a founding member of Interplay Productions. I cannot overstate the influence that Interplay's games have had on both the games of the 80s and 90s, but modern games. She was with Logicware, Contraband Entertainment. She's been affiliated at various times with Barking Lizards Technologies, Electronic Arts, Bloomberg, Microsoft, MacPlay, and Ubisoft, among other game companies. And she currently works as the CEO of Old School. Am I saying that right, Rebecca?
Yep, it's Old School.
Old School. But it's spelled kind of Middle English. OLDESKUUL in Seattle, Washington. So that barely touches the depth of what you've done in video games. I've heard you wax poetic and tell stories for hours about the stuff you've done, and it's really fascinating. But one thing, I was doing some research for today's show, and evidently you were the very first person in history to win an arcade video game championship. Is that correct?
Actually, it was the home video game championship, but yeah, it was the very first nationally sponsored video game contest. Basically, I'm effectively the first esports winner. Wow,
and that was in 1980, is that correct?
Yep, the contest started in June of 1980 in the Topanga Canyon Plaza. It was the Atari 2600 Space Invaders, and the whole contest was sponsored by Atari. It was a big deal. They had TV commercials and everything. And I was in the regional, and after I won the regional, I then went on to the nationals, and then the nationals was held around November 8th, I think it was, but it was the beginning of November of 1980 in New York City. They took us to, at the time, it was called Time Warner Building, but today it's called the 75 Rockefeller.
Okay.
But they took us there, and they had me and the champions of 4 other cities, because it was Dallas, Chicago, San Francisco, L.A., and New York. Yeah, so New York, Dallas, Chicago, San Francisco. It's 5.
So they basically split the country into 4 regions.
5 regions.
5 regions, okay.
5 regions. And at that point, they had the 5 of us battle it out, and I was the one who won.
How tough was the competition? Like, was it like in the movies where you're just sweating and it's all nail biting and you had to turn your hat around backwards to win like Sylvester Stallone, or what happened there?
No, it's not like the movies. Like, as an example, when they did this movie recently called Pixels, where they were supposedly at some championship in 1982. I was looking at this going like, first off, all the logos in the background where it says Atari, Coleco, Nintendo, and so forth. I said, there's no bloody way that would have happened. Those companies hated each other. They would never put their logos on the same banner.
Yeah,
and
right.
Things like, and the whole show itself. Now, the regionals were kind of like what you see in the shows and what's going on today, where it was a big deal. The regional was in the center of a shopping mall. They had long lines. They had this big island in the middle of the mall where they had.
So it was at a mall.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Today. Yeah, today it's called the Westfield Topanga, but back then it was called the Topanga Canyon Plaza Mall. Of course, it looks different today because they remodeled it, but I remember the mall was a 2-story mall with a big open air area, but there was this big island where they set up the contest. They had people, you had to pay $1 for an entry fee. This is 1980, so it's like $5 today, whatever, but
right.
It was, you pay $1, you go in there, and you just play the game. It was game 1, B difficulty, which means the ship is double wide, no free guys. So you just play until you die. And then
so the actual little ship that you're moving around under the shields in Space Invaders was twice as wide as normal to make it easier to hit, and you didn't get any more lives.
Correct.
Okay.
The intent was to make sure that you died.
Right.
So I started playing, and after I got scored something like about, I think it was like 88,000 points or something like that, somewhere in that number. That's when they finally just landed on me. And, I never lost the base. I just kept shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting, and they landed on me. And at that point, I then looked at the judge who stands behind me, because the game wraps around at 10,000. So I wrapped the game 8 times.
We used to call that rolling over, like you try to roll over asteroids, but I guess you called it wrapping around.
Yep, wrapping around.
Yep.
But what happened was I just looked at the judge and said, "Is that good?" Because I don't know. Then, as I was walking away, they then came back and said, "Can you let us hold your score for a little bit?" And I go, "Why?" "It's so high that we're afraid it might intimidate other people.
Oh, right.
We want people to pay the money." And so I was like, "Really?"
Yeah. You broke the system.
Fine, I don't care. Because I thought for certain I was going to lose. I mean, at that time of my life, I had almost no self-esteem.
Right.
Well, they then announced saying, "Okay, that Burger is the winner." And
right. Now, were you known? You weren't known as Burger at that time, were you?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I wasn't known as Burger. It wasn't until I got to Boom Corporation, which is 1982, when I really started getting that nickname.
Right.
I won.
Yeah.
And my friend who brought me there, a guy named Tom Wicker, he was the one who was jumping up and down for joy. And I'm sitting there going like, I can't have actually won.
Yeah.
There's no way.
So what did you actually win? Like, what was the prize?
Oh, for that, the regional, it really wasn't much. All the prize was a round trip ticket for one to the Nationals.
That was your prize, was to go make them more money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was my prize. A round trip ticket, all expense paid, to New York City for one. It wasn't even for 2. It was for 1. So now to put in perspective, at that particular point in my life, my parents and I were completely estranged. I mean, that's another
I'm sorry to
story.
hear that.
So I was pretty much alone. And then when I showed up at the Nationals, I was there by myself, and I was like 16, just turning 17 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember how melancholy I was when I saw all the other contestants with at least 1 or 2 of their parents with them, and I was just there by myself. Which was something, because I knew that Atari realized that later on they had to change the rules, because they said, "Wait a minute, we can't have an unescorted minor." But I then said, "Well, I don't have parents. I'm just me."
Yeah, it's just me.
Yeah. So anyway, afterwards, they took us on a tour of New York City. I remember a ride in a limo. I mean, a really long stretch limo, because they had to hold like 12 people in the back. They took us to this really fancy Italian restaurant. They took us to the United Nations building. They took us to Central Park. They then took us, of course, to the Time Warner building where they looked around for, because that was a time, the Time Warner building was Atari's corporate headquarters, even though the factories and R&D was all done in Silicon Valley. But then they took us to this really fancy hotel. They then gave us my room, and what's nice is that in the hotel room was an Atari 2600 set up with Space Invaders.
So you could practice.
So I could practice. So what I did is that I just, since I really didn't have anything else to do after they dropped us off, I played the game for a couple of hours, just one game.
Well, now, was it set up the same way? Was it set up so that it was a, wider ship, or was it the standard Space Invaders?
It wasn't a custom cartridge. It's just a game setting. So you just go to game 1, difficulty B,
gotcha,
and play that particular version of the game. As long as you play that one, you're playing the same one I did.
Okay.
Then the very next morning, they took us up to breakfast, and then they took us straight to the Time Warner building. This is where it's really hilarious. They thought, because in the regionals, everybody at least died. Nobody was just playing the game forever and ever and ever and ever.
Right.
So they put us in a very small room.
So they thought it was going to go real quick.
Yep. They put us in a small room. Behind us was like 30 or 40 folding chairs in which they had people from press. So the people from Newsweek, Time, ABC News, NBC News.
Oh, that's pretty big.
Oh, yeah, it was huge. Then they had 5 TVs in a row. They each gave us a T-shirt with our names on the back of them. And then they had us sit down. And then they said, all right, everybody get ready. So we had all put our fingers on the reset button and hold it down. And they said, go. And I let go of the reset button. Started playing the game. And I just focused on my game. The one thing that was hilarious was one of the guys was from Chicago, and he was kind of reminded me of in Pixels, the little short guy, Peter.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
The entourage and sponsorships.
Yeah.
The guy from Chicago was just like that. He didn't have the girls, but he had this T-shirt from some electronics store, and he was saying how once he wins the contest, he's going to do TV commercials for this electronics store. And
so he was like sponsored by this electronic. He was wearing their shirt.
Yeah, he was wearing their shirt, and he was doing all that stuff, and all the other contestants were looking at him like, "Are you real?
Yeah,
I mean, is this real?" Well, Karma, he was the first one out.
He was. Yeah, I love it. So, what was your score in that one?
165,200 points. Did
they come stop you, or did you finally get hit?
They would stop us. What happened was that after he fell out, then, of course, the announcers are going, yes, and one person's out, blah, blah, blah. We're waiting for the next one. Well, then an hour and 45 minutes go by. And
the announcers are getting bored.
None of us have come out. I mean, we're still playing the game.
Yeah, you
then
can't.
That's when,
go ahead. I'm sorry, you can't see this at home, but Steve's in the booth and they're laughing. Steve, what was your highest score you ever had on Space Invaders? Do you even remember?
It was a little bit less than that.
Yeah,
not much.
Yeah,
just little. But I would have done good in that competition.
Would you?
No,
no,
no, not at all.
All right, Becky, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Anyway, so you had the one guy drop out, and an hour and a half later.
Yep. So 20 minutes in, he drops out. An hour and a half later, the announcer just says, and so concludes the Atari our judges are going to go out and tabulate the score. And then we're still playing, by the way. And we were told when the game started, this was sudden death.
Right.
It was, last man standing. So I then said, so does this mean we have to keep playing?
Right.
And he goes like, nope, we're done. I just went over to my cartridge and just yanked it out with the power still on. And so that's it. I'm done with this game.
Yeah, I don't ever want to play it again. So yeah, that was so after Billy Mitchell won like the arcade version of Miss Pac-Man or something, they said, "What do you want to do now?" And he said, "I don't ever want to play that game again." That was like his response. So your score in that was obviously the highest. So you won the whole shebang. So what was your prize for that?
I won a stand-up or asteroids game. Big stand-up arcade game. But I asked them if I could switch it for a tabletop missile command. They said, sure.
Oh, that's cool.
I got a tabletop missile command delivered to me.
Do you still have that?
No. Unfortunately for me, life, and I had to sell it a long time ago. I missed that thing. It was really nice.
All right. So final question on this, and then some people are listening because they want to hear me ask you about Bards Tale stuff. So we will get to that, people. But because Becky is the CEO of a game development company that's doing cool stuff. So we'll get into that here in a moment. Have you ever run into any of those people again?
Yeah, actually, the guy from Chicago. He and I became friends years later. He's a stand-up comedian. His name is Steve Marmel, and he does screenwriting for several TV shows and so forth. He has a very active Twitter account. So he's done quite well for himself.
Good.
The other guys, there was King Ming of San Francisco, and Frank Tetro of New York. After the contest was over, that was that. I know Frank was kind of a little mad because he really wanted to win. He thought he was going to win because in the regionals, he had the highest score of all the regionals. I had the second highest.
So he thought he was a shoo-in. All right.
So he thought he was a shoo-in because he thought, hey, he had the highest regional, so therefore he's obviously going to be winning. But I creamed his score because the technique I played the game was such that it was a very aggressive that I literally cleared the screen every 10 seconds.
Wow.
10 to 20 seconds.
I've never been that good at the Twitch games, where you have to have that amazing hand-eye coordination. Well, I'll tell you what I got to do. I got to get us to a break. But when we come back, Becky, the break's, short break, we'll come back. And I've got a question from somebody on RPG Codex about an old school property called Dragons of the Rip. They were hoping to get an update on. So I'll ask you about that after the break. And then, hopefully we'll get an update on where the Bards Tale Remastered stuff is, and anything else that Old School's working on. So when we come back, more of Burger Becky Heineman, who is just not only a yarn spinner, but a game development veteran, very much defines the word. And when we come back, Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate Battle of the Galaxies. Grab your slot today for the only online game where tactics and strategy still reign supreme. Visit Megawars.net and get options only available in our special pre-sales previews running now.
Megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. We are joined by Burger Becky Heineman, who is the CEO of Old School Game Development Studio and has been involved in major gaming high points, basically since, I'm trying to think. When was Interplay founded, Becky?
It was October '83.
So there you go. She got in on the ground floor of what we know as of mainstream computer games and has been involved in many, many high points. So I want to talk about some of what Old School's doing. And I had a question, and we'll get into the Bards Tale stuff here in a minute. I know that's not the major thing on your plate, but, a lot of people are interested in that remastered thing you're doing for In Exile. But I had a question from Les T_T. I don't even want to go know what that name means, Les TT. Question from the RPG Codex, and he asked me if I could ask you about the Dragons of the Rip game. I guess it was an RPG that Old School had talked about doing. Do you have any current status on that?
Well, our biggest problem right now is just funding it.
Okay.
Our thing is that we're self-funding the game. So we are every now and then we do designs of it. We've got tons. We've got like several novels worth of storyline. In fact, one of the things I'm actually working with Janelle is actually doing a comic book based on it, because I don't know if you knew, but I actually write comic books.
Yeah, I saw that.
And,
you do a comic I know you do one comic that has some of the IP from Ranma 1/2 and a Sailor Ranko, I think. I'm not, yeah.
Sailor Ranko is the name of the comic, but it's a hybrid of Sailor Moon and Ranma 1/2. Yeah. And I did that comic really to teach me how to do comic book cinematography. That's one reason why, if you look at the first couple of pages and stuff, we're kind of rough around the edges, but then when it finally got to the end, it's like, to the current pages, they're really professionally done. It's because I kept asking people, how do you do this? How do you tell a story? How do you do that? But it was really me to teach me how to do comic book writing. Now, I don't draw the images. I wish I could draw, but I can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. I've always been jealous of people that can.
Yeah, but I hire people who could do it for me. But at the same time, it's when we're just getting better and better and better. Because if you look through the entire comic, you could see it's got certain parts where quality wasn't so good. Some places the quality was really good. That's because the latest stuff is the real good stuff. The early stuff is the stuff that's not the good. Since then, I've actually written 2 other comic books. Neither of them have been released yet. One's called My Reflection, which is a comedy, and Unsung Heroes, which is like a gritty sci-fi, shoot 'em up style, kind of like a Star Wars-ish.
Right.
But it's more akin to Firefly, because it's a group of people in this one ship that just caught in the middle of a war. They have nothing to do with the war. They just want to survive.
Right.
And so and also I've done all these novels on fanfiction.net. In fact, I've written like 9 full novels.
Wow.
And those are all to help me teach me how to write. Because the way I do things is I don't learn by reading manuals or stuff. I learn by just doing it.
So is that a roundabout way of saying that Dragons of the Rip will have a higher level of writing than any of the other games you've done?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because for one is that Dragons of the Rip, the entire idea behind the storyline really came to me around 1996, 97, somewhere around there. Since then, I've been fleshing out the world because I really wanted to make certain that this world felt real, in which every little thing that when you're in there, there's lots of things that you say, why is that there? But if you knew the backstory, then you would understand. But it's not actually going to be there. Maybe someone might do a throwaway line and so forth saying, oh, yeah, that switch is there. Or that's what we used to keep the robbers out. So, well, how does that work? Well, the robber comes in, the magic stone then turns into frost because this detects this. And we have little magic gems, dust we put on our merchandise that kind of like in Dragons of the Rip, the initial world you start in is a fantasy-like world. Think Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings kind of
medieval
world.
high fantasy.
Yeah, medieval high fantasy. However, they have modern items. They have ATMs. They have burglar alarms. They have computers. They're just not run on electricity. They're run on magic.
Okay.
So therefore, instead of using little RFID things in your merchandise that would trigger when you go out the front door like we do here in our world, they put dust on the merchandise in the store, and if you go buy it, then they deactivate the dust. So if you walk out the front door and the dust is on you, the little magic gem will then zap you and freeze you in a block of ice.
Oh, wow. So so Dragons of the Rip, is this a turn-based tactical? I mean, what kind of the setting sounds interesting, but what kind of role-playing game can people expect?
It's standard turn-based tactical. It's it's a matter of it's a dungeon crawler.
It's a dungeon crawler. Okay.
Yeah, the dungeon crawler. It's still grid-based. It is something I'm thinking about maybe making more free-form, allowing you to walk everywhere you want. But it is essentially, it's, to be more honest, it's node-based. Even though in terms of the game, node-based is, imagine just a regular 3D world like Skyrim, so you have an open world.
Mm-hmm.
But you are not truly open. You move from point to point. So like if there's a path, you can then say, I want to go down from one path to the next path, the next path, the next path, and it'll walk down the path that can be in any direction, up, down, left, right, whatever.
Are there any other are there any other games like that out there? I'm trying to imagine that. Is there any other game you could compare that to?
The only way you could the only thing that's even remotely similar is how you move around in Myst.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. The original Myst.
Yeah, the original Myst. So therefore you'd say, okay, I want to go to this thing, and then you would just go there. Now, of course, the world is drawn in Unreal, so it's, and also the looks are they're not photorealistic. We went for a more cartoony look, and the whole reason we did this was because of budget. Because to do photorealistic art, it's expensive.
It really is.
Oh my God.
I don't think people realize how much the sound and the art add to the cost of a game. So, okay. Is it party based? Do you get to make your own party, or do you recruit?
Oh, yeah. Well, in fact, the whole game from the ground up is all based on your party. This is not a game that's designed to be telling a story. It's basically, here is a world. Create your characters, and the skill system is very much like what's in Dragon Wars, which is all skill based. There is no class.
Okay, I got to stop you right there, and just because I was going to ask you this anyway. Our mutual friend Matt Barton of Matt Chat always refers to Dragon Wars as Bards Tale 4. So is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, that's exactly what it started life as. It was Bards Tale 4.
Okay. So he's not being snarky. He's being legit.
Nope.
Okay.
No, he was legit. The story behind that is a very simple one. After I did Bards Tale 3, because remember, I'm the one who created Bards Tale 3.
Right.
Frank Michael Stanford created 1 and 2, but I did Bards Tale 3. And after I did Bards Tale 3, I immediately started work on Bards Tale 4. Coming up with the new graphics engine, the new scripting system and whatever. But this was at a time in which Interplay wanted to become its own publisher. And at that time, we were getting ready to release 2 games, Battle Chess and Neuromancer. Electronic Arts and Activision were bidding to have us distribute through them. Activision, i.e. Mediagenic, won the war, and we went ahead and had our games distributed, published by Interplay, but distributed through Activision. EA was pissed, and in retaliation, they said, those 2 trademarks we own that you guys make games on, Wasteland and Bards Tale, you're not going to use them anymore. Sorry.
So
and with that, I couldn't call it Bards Tale anymore.
Okay, but realistically, if you play Bards Tale 1 through 3 and then you go play Dragon Wars, you basically played the 4th Bards Tale. Did you just change the name, or?
Yeah, we had to change the name, the story, and stuff like that. But if you play the game, it's like, gee, this looks a lot like Bards Tale.
Okay. Well, all right. So back to, and can people get Dragon Wars on GOG right now? How can people?
Yeah, on
okay.
GOG.
All right, so Bards Tale fans, if you haven't already, go play Dragon Wars. Now, back to Dragons of the Rip. that sounds very cool. Any idea? And I know it's hard to say, well, but with current level of funding and this and that, when you may get that out the door.
The earliest we can even look at getting it outdoors 2 years.
Okay.
Mostly because of the fact that if someone was to write me a check for $1 million right now, I can get it out in a year, but I don't have $1 million. And we are doing it on literally, it's like, hey, got any spare time? Sure,
Right.
we'll work on the game. That's how we're doing it.
That's kind of how I had Don Wilkins from a week or two ago about Stellar Tactics, which is a sci-fi, and that's kind of what he's doing. He's doing it in his spare time, and when he gets time to work on it, he works on it. So now he's gotten his to the level where he's on early access, but he's still just working on it as he can, because he's got a day job, and you've got quote unquote a day job with Old School. So
exactly. Yeah. Even though this is an old school game, I'm doing a day job in the sense I'm focusing, or better yet, the priority is work that's actually paying me a paycheck.
Yep.
As long as it pays me a paycheck and helps me pay my rent, that gets my full and undivided attention.
All right.
But if it's a game that's not paying me any money, or ones that I'm not really confident I'm ever going to see any money for it, then that gets put on the back burner.
Funny how that works when you got to run a business. So
my landlord does not work on exposure.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. So, Dragons of the Rip, interested to say, I'm very curious, and intrigued by the way you've described it. And, with your game development history, I can only assume that it would have a certain level of quality to it. Let's talk about, because a lot of people are interested in the current status of the Bards Tale I-III remasters that you're doing for In Exile Entertainment in conjunction with the Bards Tale 4 Kickstarter. So what's the current status on those?
It's on the back burner.
Okay. So
I work on it in my spare time whenever I get chances to work on it. The game's already in beta. It's been distributed to some of the backers a while ago.
Yeah.
But it's one of those where I was supposed to be getting some money for it, and I have no idea or any idea if I'll ever see it, so it's on the back burner.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'll let people add whatever they want. I'm not going to go any deeper on that. On as far as, the business arrangement. Let's assume hypothetically, best case scenario, that it comes out. As being a remaster, describe to us what you've done with these games.
Oh, okay. What I've done is I've taken the engine I did for Bards Tale 3, looked at what I did. I then wrote an engine from scratch, a brand new one, in which what it does is it plays the Bards Tale 3 data. Because the original game was written in 65.816 for the Apple II GS, so you really can't use that code, not unless you want to do it in an emulator, and I wasn't doing it in an emulator. So I wrote an engine that runs Bards Tale data, pulled up all the data for Bards Tale 3, got it up and running, including all the assets I had for Bards Tale 3 for the 2GS. The game never got shipped, but I actually had it up and running. Once I had that all working, then I took the data from Bards Tale 1 and 2, converted it to the new format. So now the engine runs all 3 games.
Okay. So they just run very well on modern systems without the need of like an emulator like DOSBox.
Yeah, in this case, it's a native game. The game runs at something like about 7,000 frames per second.
What?
It's like, okay. So perform, like whenever I do a CPU profile, it doesn't even show up because that's how little CPU time it takes.
Wow.
But it's a full native game. It's not, there's no emulation at all. It is an engine that plays Bards Tale game data.
So there's no timing issues. The animations aren't too quick or any, it's just.
No. This was done with modern technology. So I'm just using the old data. So therefore the animations I still support all the animations. So every single of the monster pictures, they animate properly. There's a shader which upreses them, but they're still animating. The music's all there. I even still support the feature I did in Bards Tale 3 where it was actually Bards Tale 1 and 2 for the 2GS where if your bard is equipped with different instruments, it'll change the music to play in that instrument.
Nice. Well, that's another thing I was going to ask. Are there any features, gameplay, dialogue? Is there anything in here that wasn't in like the quote unquote originals, or is it just a modern, flawless experience for modern machines?
3 things. One,
Okay.
all the bugs that were found in Bards Tale 1 and 2 have been fixed. Number two is that the game allows you, this is a new feature, it allows you through the Adventurers Guild to switch games. So therefore you can roll up your characters in any one of the 3 games. Once you roll them up, you play them for a while, go back to the Adventurers Guild, and you could click Journey to Tangermain, Journey to Scarabray, or visit the Wasteland.
Wow.
And it will take you to that game.
Same
and your
party?
characters, as they are, can go to that game. So you can actually take items from one game and play in the other.
Oh, that's neat. That's super cool. All right. So,
and the number 3 is,
yep.
since I have since I no longer am limited to 64K, I went through all the maps and I added a lot of placeholder text, things to describe things like if there was a magic area, there's little things saying, hey, it looks magical here. And another one says, like, who are you going to call? Magic Busters.
Oh, funny.
I did all these places everywhere in all the games. I just added all this flavor text.
So there's a lot of kind of, that sounds cool. So, all right. So, and I'm just doing this because I got to get us to another break. Where we're at is they're basically all playable. They're in quote unquote beta, but the only thing really holding anything up is finalizing the business side of it. Is that
Pretty
correct?
much.
Okay.
Yep.
If anybody's interested, can they still get in on beta testing?
In beta testing, yeah. I just go ahead and just send me a tweet on Twitter, stuff like, and I'll see about putting on the list. I have a mailing list and stuff like that.
Okay.
But
And you're
just so I
Burger
know that
Becky
people-
on Twitter, right?
Correct.
Okay. So
Burger Becky on Twitter, and there's also, I know that if you pledged for Bards Tale 4, you should have a link inside of the Bards Tale 4 thing where you can get at least the latest beta. Now, of course, what I'll have is more advanced versions of it because I'm constantly updating it. In fact, the last time I built the codes like last week, and I added a bunch of new jokes to the levels.
Do you have an update on when the Bards Tale 4 is supposed to come out from an Exile? Because I would hope that the remasters are out at the same time, but
the remasters will almost certainly be out well before they finish theirs. But as far as Bards Tale 4 is concerned, I'm not involved in there.
Right.
I asked to be involved, but they politely declined. So
okay, well,
I'm not involved at all in Bards Tale 4.
All right, well, that from my perspective, that's a loss, but I have no idea what went on there. So, but I think it's very cool that you got to.
To be honest, neither do I.
Yeah.
So there you go.
All right. Yeah, we're okay. Yeah, I don't know. I do not know any of the people from In Exile. I had Colin McComb and George Zeitz on to talk about the Numenera Tides of Numenera game, and that's it. So, but they seem nice enough. So, okay. Yeah. Well, they didn't seem nice. They were nice. I enjoyed talking to them.
Anyways, go ahead.
All right, cool. All right. Well, I'm glad you at least got to do that, and I'm looking forward to Dragons of the Rip and the other stuff you're working on. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll try to go through a quick news segment, but we'll see what happens because no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Murphy's Law and Shane Plays. Geek Talk Radio go hand in hand. I've got to, real quick, Steve, I've got to do an ad for a sponsor, and then we'll take it to a break. Okay, so some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has everything for all of your gaming needs. I heartily recommend them. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Tell them Shane Plays sent you.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as The Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net.
The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate Battle of the Galaxies. Grab your slot today for the only online game where tactics and strategy still reign supreme. Visit megawars.net and get options only available in our special pre-sales previews running now.
Megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into things we love. Remember, if you're hearing this live on Saturday on 99.5 Faith Talk, this is a temporary station change due to Ouachita Baptist football. Glad to have you along. Hope you enjoy the show. But if you're confused, that's why you're hearing this. We're normally on 96.5 at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Sister station, 96.5 FM The Answer. And about mid-November, we'll swap back over. So, got Burger Becky Heineman on, who's not only a veteran game developer of many just very crucial and exciting titles in game development history. She's also the CEO of Old School, which is a game development studio in Seattle. One thing I forgot to do, Becky, was acknowledge you as the original developer of Battle Chess, which
I was one of the developers.
Okay, well, you were
held by quarrels. There's the things. The games that I did solo were like Mind Shadow, Tracer Sanction, Borrowed Time, Pastimes in Tone Town, Bards Tale I-III, Dragon Wars. But the other games, I wrote parts of the engines and a lot of tech, and that was Battle Chess, Neuromancer, Wasteland, parts of Descent, things like that.
Yeah, just real minor games. People need to go find every podcast and interview you've done and listen to you tell amazing stories. I still want to transcribe when you were on Fragments of Silicon and you were talking about game developing for the Mac and working with Apple. That's fascinating. And I'm going to do it. Yeah, I'm going to do an article about that because that's amazing. We've got roughly 5 minutes, so I want to try to get in a quick news segment here. So, hey, Steve, let's listen to the news team, see what they got going on. Oh, there they go, working on a Saturday. They work hard, Steve. For every $1 of Patreon support the show gets, they get a penny an hour raise. And folks, I do have sponsors. I'm so appreciative to have them. However, there are other costs that the show has that they don't cover everything. I'm going to still keep going. Don't hear me wrong. But if you want to support this, if you like Geek Talk Radio, I'd love to have your support on Patreon. But you can listen with or without it. And my Patreon supporters out there, thank you very much. And if you're just a listener and you don't support by Patreon, thank you very much. So very glad to have you along for the ride. Now, Okay, this is a just to follow up. You know, we were a sponsor and an advertiser for SpaCon, the inaugural SpaCon in Hot Springs, a couple of weeks ago. It did so well that they put it on the schedule for the next 8 years. You hear that, Steve? 8 years. So they quadrupled their expected attendance. It was done very well. I'm looking forward to working with them next year. Now this, I've got to get Becky's opinion on this next news item. So Nintendo has been talking about their new console and dropping hints for a year or two, calling it the NX, being very, kind of shadowy about what it really is. And they finally revealed yesterday what it is. It's called the Switch, and it is a console that you can play it as a home console, or you can unplug it and take you with as a portable console. Now, did you see anything about this yet, Becky?
Oh yeah, I've actually been working with them on that.
Ah, well, I wish I'd have known that at the beginning. I'd have peppered you. Is there anything you can talk about?
I told you what they announced. You know, NDAs.
Yeah. Is there anything you can share that we don't know?
I never mentioned it. I can't. There's lots of things I can't talk about.
Okay.
So I can't even say confirm or deny those kind of things.
Okay. Well, can you confirm or deny that a trailer came out yesterday talking about the new Switch?
Confirmed. Yeah, there's a trailer, and go like, yeah, finally it could.
So, okay, so do you what is your not as a developer, but as just a game developer, or not as a developer working on something related, but as a game developer and a game player in general, what do you think of this console?
I really, really like it. But one thing you have to always understand about Nintendo does not consider anybody else competition. Nintendo is first and foremost a toy company.
Right.
They approach making machines and things as toys. So to them, this is a brand new toy, just like the Wii U was a toy. The Wii was a toy. They don't consider a video game machine. So here it's what sort of new toy goes with people today? And people are like the cell phone generation, the Pokemon Go thing, things like the NVIDIA Shield and so forth. And they wanted to go for that kind of market. Right. So hence the Switch was born. I'm still looking at going like, it's interesting. I don't know what their price point is.
Yeah, that's what everybody I ask about it. They go, well, how much is it going to cost? Because one of the reasons the Wii was successful was not just the Wiimote, was the price point was significantly lower than the other two consoles out there. I got to move us on. Next news item here. I guess you saw that the voice actors there's a union that has declared a strike against major video game companies. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, I have, and I think it's a stupid thing.
Yeah, well, they're saying that they want better safety because they're getting into these huge, long recording sessions that are hurting their vocal cords, but they're also wanting more money. And this is SAG-AFTRA, which I guess is a voice acting union in general, but they're calling a strike against EA, Activision, Disney character voices, Take-Two Interactive Software, and others. And so far, the response from the video game companies has been pretty dismissive. So we'll see how it goes. Last, The Walking Dead has actually gotten renewed for season 8 before season 7 even premieres tomorrow night. So Walking Dead fans rejoice. Becky, we got about 10 seconds left. Thank you so much for being on the show. I love talking to you, and I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Well, look, thanks for having me on.
All right, have a great weekend.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.